So welcome, Emma. Thank you very much for joining me for Data Cubed Killer Questions. First question for you. What got you into data?
Thanks very much for the invite, Helen. It's really nice to be able to speak like this. It's a broad question, what got you into data? I could talk about kind of the curiosity and realization of its transformative power because I've been working in the digital sector since the turn of the century. That's a long time, and it was very much the Wild West back then. But the realization where gut decision making really wasn't going to cut it anymore now that we had some more relevant information to go from, i.e. data, was really, really prevalent in the digital industries right up until probably 2010. I would say was when I really started to notice a shift into data-driven decision making. Before that point, I had always worked in the entertainment and music sectors, and I think there's even more of a legacy there on gut decision making, on intuition decision making, than there is perhaps in the likes of FMCG, automotive, etc., etc. But the moment that I really began to understand that data could start to draw pictures was a little bit of a light bulb moment in terms of predicting outcomes and not just informing tactics, but strategies that really drew me in. Because whereas I have worked right across the digital sector before it got productized and commercialized to the extent that it's now ubiquitous, what really began to interest me was the impact that data could have on business results. So that really kind of high strategic level, and how C-suites could have their own light bulb moment and begin to really understand that by putting a little bit of effort and doing a little bit of work when it came to understanding the implications that data was telling them, they could really start to change the needle for their businesses. So I'm really believe a really great believer in that data tells stories, or data can help us tell stories, I should say. It can provide us with the information, but it's only by understanding that information that we can make an actual impact. And I think kind of where it comes to the sector that I work in now, which is really change management and looking at transformation, data plays such a critical role in modern change management practices. It should be the foundation for everything. It's still not, because again, there's a huge amount of legacy around change management. And while teams can be very closely looking at the data itself, they're not necessarily pulling that through into the decisions that they should be making on behalf of their employees to guide them through the change. So the softer decisions. So it's always kind of with an eye on the human aspects of change that I believe data can really support the stories that we need to tell. Because it not only enhances the effectiveness of change initiatives, but it helps us build a culture of adaptability and a culture of visibility. Because at the end of the day, the numbers don't really lie. So while I appreciate that we can look at data in so many different ways and slice it in so many different ways, for me, data helps build resilience within organizations, and that's why it's exciting.
Excellent. Thanks, Emma. There you go. Data builds you pictures, gives you resilience, and tells you stories. So that's great. Thank you for that. Next killer question for you, Emma. What do you see is the biggest data challenge facing organizations in 2024?
That's a good question. I think it's a two-part question. The first part is how they use it, and how they use it in the face of the growing integration of AI within businesses. So the way that customers and consumers are using AI, and obviously there are some significant data privacy and security challenges at an individual level, which hopefully kind of the buckets of GDPR in Europe and CCPA in the States can begin to start marshalling and begin to include within how organizations are allowed to use personal data. But again, tying this all back to an organizational level, I think there's a really big challenge for organizations in how their employees are beginning to use AI and the data that is generating, but also then how the organizations themselves are integrating AI to be of benefit to them. From that point of view, we all know that data, the kind of the amount of data that generated has increased exponentially, right? In the
Yeah.
past 10, 12, 15 years, we've seen that curve accelerate off the scale. That's happening even more now because of the data that is being generated in conjunction with AI. And I think the biggest challenge is seeing how organizations begin to deal with that from a company data privacy point of view and governance. And then also from how they are able to use AI and the data that they can create with it and put within it to benefit customers without falling foul of GDPR and other data privacy laws. So it's a bit of a boring answer to the question, sorry, and it's probably not one that really goes off the page, but it is front and center, and it's
Yeah.
really interesting to see how organisations are beginning to deal with that.
Absolutely, it's the core of getting it right, isn't it? So yeah, thank you, Emma. And what about the opposite side of the coin? So what do you see as the biggest opportunity facing organizations this year regarding data?
Of course, it's the flip side, isn't it? So, kind of tying back into what I was just saying, for me, at a customer level, it's all about personalization and customer experience. So, using AI-driven analytics to offer insights into behavior, into preferences, and into needs in a more efficient way than we have been able to do in the past, because obviously that's something that we have been doing since we were able to begin to close the loop with digital data, with how customers behave online, because for the first time we had true response metrics. But that's, going really, really much further now. How do we influence customer interactions at scale using AI? And that's a real opportunity. And then again, at an organizational level, for me, the exciting thing, and this ties back into my first point about the impact on business results of data, is the strategic business impact that AI can have in terms of those personalizations and customer experience improvements beginning to improve overall business results. So how AI is impacting that. And again, we're going to get the leaders, the organizations who are becoming relatively adept at using AI to their advantage to benefit their customers and ultimately benefit their bottom line. And it will be really interesting to see how that plays out this year and next year, because I think it's going to take us a while to understand what's going on internally and how those organizations are beginning to cement data within their infrastructure. Sorry, cement AI
Great.
within their infrastructure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So much potential with AI. Great. Thanks, Emma. And last question for you, the most important one. Do you happen to know a data or AI related joke that you can share?
I've got a friend who is very close to kind of switching to an alternative career as a comedian. I should flag that that is not me. So I apologise in advance for my dad joke, which is in fact my mum joke. But yeah, but there is a point I want to make from the back of it. So my data joke is, why was the computer cold at the party?
I don't know, Emma. Why was the computer cold at the party?
Left its windows open.
Oh, oh
Sorry,
my goodness.
I know I had to go bad. But seriously, the joke is that while we're drowning in data and we're going to get further deluged, there are still organizations out there, many of them ignoring the facts and figures and making those intuition gut-based decisions. And that's not a joke, because this is a
Yeah.
data-driven world now. And I think, it certainly is your job running a data agency, as my job looking at kind of how to change current states in organizations. It's really, really important that the long tail is addressed as well, because otherwise there will be a growing gap between those who can use data effectively and those who can't. And nobody wants to be kind of sat there in a cold room with the windows open when everybody else has left.
Nicely done, Emma. Turning a joke into a good hint and tip for the audience too. So thank you ever so much. Really appreciate your time, Emma. Always good to chat to you. And
Thank you,
thanks
Helen.
for answering my killer questions.
Great to speak today.